Solitude has always been my comfort zone. I don't mind keeping to myself, less drama, less noise. My only real companion is my cat, a fluffy orange tabby with striking green eyes that I rescued 3 years ago. He's been my rock, especially after I lost my job as a software developer in last year's brutal round of layoffs. About 6 months ago, my cat started having digestive issues. The vet diagnosed him with inflammatory bowel disease, which means he needs regular checkups and medication adjustments. These appointments happen every few weeks, and since I don't own a car, I have to take the metro to get to the veterinary clinic across town. This one Tuesday started like any other appointment day. I carefully placed my cat into his carrier, a soft-sided, well-ventilated travel case that I'd bought specifically because it was comfortable for him during these trips. He settled in quietly, used to the routine by now. The metro station was crowded as usual during mid-morning. I found a seat in a car that wasn't too packed, sitting next to a woman and what appeared to be her son, maybe around 7 or 8 years old. I placed the carrier on my lap, making sure my cat was comfortable. Not even a minute later, I heard the child excitedly point out my cat to his mother and ask if he could have it. I was a bit surprised at the question, but figured he just wanted to pet my cat. Before I could offer, the mother told her son that of course he could have it, then turned to me and asked if she could have my cat. I blinked several times, sure I had misheard. When I asked her to repeat herself, she told me again that she wanted my cat, her voice shifting from sweet to annoyed in seconds, like I was being unreasonable for asking her to clarify. I refused, telling her she couldn't have my cat, but offered to let her son pet him instead, trying to be reasonable. This apparently was the wrong thing to say. The kid's face scrunched up, turning red almost instantly. He started screaming that he wanted to have my cat right now, repeating his demand over and over while stomping his feet on the floor of the metro car. People were starting to stare, but I was more concerned when I saw the mother reach for my cat's carrier. I instinctively moved to block her, gently pushing her hands away from the carrier. The look on her face shifted from entitlement to pure rage. She accused me of touching her, her voice raised in outrage. Before I could even respond, she slapped me across the face. Hard. The sound echoed through the metro car, and my cheek stung with a burning pain. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. That's when a man sitting across from us stood up and stepped over. He told the mother she needed to calm down and that she couldn't just hit someone and try to take their pet. The mother shouted back that I had assaulted her first and claimed that it was actually her cat that I had stolen from her son. Her voice was shrill, and her son's crying grew even louder. The man looked at me skeptically for a moment and asked if what she said was true, questioning if it was really her cat. I denied her claims, explaining that this was my cat and I was taking him to a vet appointment. I described how she had just asked for my cat, and when I refused, she tried to grab him and then slapped me. By now, several passengers were filming the incident on their phones. The mother noticed and became even more agitated, lunging for my cat carrier again. I stood up, holding it away from her, and pleaded with her to stop, telling her she was scaring my cat. The man positioned himself between us as the mother continued screaming absurd accusations. Her son was now lying on the floor of the metro, kicking and screaming about wanting my cat. When we finally reached the next stop, the man suggested we get the station security involved. I agreed, not wanting the situation to escalate further. As we exited the train, the mother followed, still yelling. A security officer approached us, likely having heard the commotion. He asked what was going on. The man and I explained what happened, taking turns to describe the events. The security officer then turned to the mother for her version of events. The mother claimed that we had assaulted her and stolen her cat, adding that her poor son was traumatized because we wouldn't give back their pet. Her story was so ridiculous that I almost laughed despite the situation. I countered her claims, mentioning that I had vet records in my bag proving this was my cat, explaining about his medical condition and my reason for traveling with him. The security officer suggested reviewing the security footage to clear up the situation. The mother's face fell immediately. She started backpedaling, claiming there was a misunderstanding. But the security officer had already radioed for assistance and another officer arrived to escort us to the security office. We watched the footage together, which clearly showed her attempting to grab my carrier and slapping me. The security officers detained her and called in social services for her son, who was still crying but being comforted by a female officer. The security officer asked if I wanted to press charges for the assault. I thought about it but decided against it. The woman clearly had issues, and I didn't want to make the situation worse for her son. I declined but asked if they could document the incident. I ended up being 15 minutes late for my cat's appointment, but the vet was understanding when I explained what happened. My cat received his treatment and was none the worse for wear, though I was still shaken by the encounter. Later that week, I received a call from the Metro Transit Authority, informing me that the woman had been banned from using the metro system for 6 months and was required to attend anger management classes. I hope for her son's sake that she gets the help she needs. My cat and I still take the metro to his appointments, but now I'm much more aware of who I sit next to. Some people really do think the world owes them whatever they want, even someone else's beloved pet. I work at the scariest haunted house in town. Super Haunts is what I'll call it here. It's a seasonal gig that pays pretty well. And honestly, I love making people scream their heads off as they navigate through our carefully designed horror maze. Working at Super Haunts has taught me a lot about how people react to fear. Some laugh nervously, some cry, some freeze in place, and others, the ones we hate, get aggressive. These aggressive types are exactly why we have strict rules at Super Haunts. The main one being, don't touch anything. Not the actors, not the props, not the animatronics, and especially not our beloved puppets. One of our star attractions is this massive puppet we call Big Mouth. Picture something like that man-eating plant from Little Shop of Horrors. Huge, toothy, and absolutely terrifying when it lunges at unsuspecting guests. Everyone who works at Super Haunts has a soft spot for Big Mouth. The puppet is expertly crafted, and the scare factor is off the charts when operated correctly. This story isn't actually mine, but my co-worker told it to me, and it still makes my blood boil. I'll share it exactly as she told it to me. It was the second weekend of October, our busiest time. I had just finished my dinner break and was heading back to my station. I work in the butcher's freezer section, where I pretend to be a half-frozen victim. When I was walking through the backstage area, I noticed the puppet operator, I'll call him the puppet master, looking absolutely furious outside his station. The puppet master frantically told me that someone had just broken Big Mouth. He explained that some idiot had started touching the puppet and had dislodged the teeth. He added with obvious anger that the culprit was now trying to leave the premises. I asked if he was serious. The puppet master confirmed that he was completely serious and instructed me to follow a guy in a red jacket and not let him leave. He said he was going to get security and the boss. I immediately spotted the man in question. Tall guy, red jacket, looking irritated as he pushed past other guests trying to make his way toward the exit. I quickly cut through our staff pathway and intercepted him near the vampire crypt. I asked the man to stop right there. He looked at me with this incredulous expression, like I was inconveniencing him. The man asked why I was stopping him and stated that he was leaving. I explained that he couldn't leave yet because he had damaged one of our props and management needed to speak with him. The man protested, claiming that he had paid for his ticket and could leave whenever he wanted. I told him that when he purchased his ticket, he had agreed to follow our rules, which included not touching any of the props or puppets, and that he had broken one of our main attractions. The man dismissed my concerns, calling it just a stupid puppet and suggesting that it shouldn't fall apart so easily if people were going to touch it. I was trying to stay professional, but this guy was unbelievable. He kept trying to push past me, but I strategically positioned myself in the narrow hallway. I told him that he needed to wait there because security was coming. The man complained that this was ridiculous and accused us of holding him against his will. I corrected him, explaining that we weren't holding him against his will. We were asking him to take responsibility for damaging our property. About 5 minutes of this back and forth continued, with him getting increasingly agitated. Finally, the puppet master returned with our head of security and the owner of Super Haunt himself. When our boss is called to handle a situation, you know it's serious. He doesn't mess around with people who disrespect the haunt or its employees. Our boss asked what the problem was. Before I could explain, Red Jacket started ranting. The man in the red jacket complained that our employees were harassing him and wouldn't let him leave. He emphasized that he had paid good money to be there and was being treated like a criminal. The puppet master quickly accused the man of breaking Big Mouth, explaining that he had grabbed the teeth and snapped two of them off the mechanism. Our boss explained to the man that we have very clear rules about not touching anything in the haunt. He pointed out that those rules are posted at the entrance, printed on tickets, and announced before guests enter. He added that the damaged puppet costs thousands of dollars. The man suggested that maybe we should make our props sturdier if we're going to let people walk through the attraction. Our boss corrected him, saying that we don't let people touch the props, we explicitly forbid it. He said the man had deliberately violated our rules and damaged expensive equipment. The boss then gave him two options: pay for the repairs or have the police called to report the incident as vandalism. The man's face went from red to white pretty quickly after that. I think he finally realized he wasn't getting out of this one. The man reluctantly agreed to pay, asking how much it would cost. The boss gave him a figure, I'm not sure exactly how much, but judging by Red Jacket's reaction, it wasn't cheap. He reluctantly pulled out his credit card, muttering under his breath the whole time. After paying for the damages, he thought he was free to go, but our boss had one more thing to say. Our boss told the man that he would need his ID as well because he was being permanently banned from super haunts. The man protested, claiming that we couldn't do that. Our boss confidently responded that he owned the place and absolutely could ban him. Security took his information down for our ban list while he continued complaining about how unfair everything was. Eventually, security escorted him out, and the puppet master went back to assess the damage to Big Mouth. The good news is that our maintenance team managed to fix Big Mouth before the next night's show. He's back in action this season, scaring the life out of people who follow the rules. But we're all extra vigilant now, watching for entitled jerks who think the rules don't apply to them. Working in a haunted house teaches you a lot about human nature. Most people are awesome and come for the fun and the scares. But there's always that one person who ruins it for everyone else. At least at super haunts, those people don't get away with it. Being alone has never bothered me. Less drama, less noise, just peace. My only real companion is my cat, an orange tabby with piercing green eyes that I rescued 3 years ago. He's been my anchor, especially after I got caught in last year's brutal wave of software developer layoffs. My job at the university was great. I managed all the equipment, helped students with their projects, and generally kept things running smoothly. It was a nice gig that gave me decent hours and enough free time to hit the gym regularly. That day in early May was absolutely beautiful. The kind of spring day that makes you want to be outside. The sun was shining, there was a light breeze, and the temperature was perfect. I had packed myself a lunch, a massive sandwich I'd made that morning. It was what I called a classic Dagwood. Ham, turkey, roast beef, salami, cheddar, Swiss, and provolone, all stacked on a 12-inch sub-roll with lettuce, tomato, and mayo. The kind of sandwich that makes your mouth water just looking at it. Instead of eating in the staff room like I usually did, I decided to head out to the quad to enjoy the weather. I didn't know there was some kind of vegan rally happening that day. I just found a nice spot under a tree, spread out my lunch, opened up the sci-fi novel I was in the middle of, and took a big bite of my sandwich. I was enjoying my lunch when I noticed 3 guys in their 20s looking at me and whispering to each other. They were all wearing matching t-shirts with some kind of vegan slogan on them. One of them, clearly the leader of their little group, stepped toward me. The leader asked me what kind of sandwich I was eating. I started describing the contents of my sandwich, mentioning the ham, turkey, roast beef, salami, and different cheeses. Before I could even finish listing everything, all 3 of them became visibly upset. Their faces turned red as they started shouting over each other. The leader yelled that meat was murder and questioned how many animals had died for what he called my disgusting sandwich. The second guy claimed the animals were tortured their entire lives just for my lunch. The third guy asked how I could eat dead animals like it was nothing. They continued their tirade for a minute or two. When they finally paused to catch their breath, I looked up from my sandwich and asked them if they knew where the word vegetarian come from. They all looked confused, which I had expected. I told them it was an old American Indian word for poor hunter. Then I returned to my book and continued eating my sandwich. It wasn't the most mature response, but I just wanted them to leave me alone. They didn't appreciate my attitude at all. The leader seemed offended and made a strange grunting noise. He reached down and yanked my book right out of my left hand. Before I could react, he smacked the sandwich from my right hand. It fell to the ground, and with a smug smile, he stomped on it, grinding my lunch into the grass. He asked me what I thought of that while smugly suggesting I wasn't so funny anymore. The whole time he was waving his finger in my face. I'm usually a calm person, but when someone destroys my property and gets in my face, that changes quickly. I grabbed his wrist, stretched his arm out, and with one sharp strike, I broke his elbow. He collapsed to the ground screaming in pain. The second guy apparently thought this was his moment to be a hero. He charged at me with his fist raised. I blocked his punch easily and landed one solid hit to the center of his chest. He dropped immediately, struggling to breathe. I turned to face the third guy, but by then campus police had arrived. They detained all four of us. The DC police were called, along with an ambulance for the two injured guys. I spent that night in a jail cell, thinking about how a simple lunch had turned into such a mess. A few weeks later, we all ended up in court. When it was my turn to speak, I told the judge exactly what happened, keeping it short and to the point. I explained that I was eating my lunch peacefully when these three approached me. I described how they verbally harassed me about my food choices. When I didn't respond as they wanted, one of them destroyed my property and threatened me. I said I had simply defended myself. The three guys, on the other hand, saw this as their opportunity to deliver lengthy speeches about animal rights, factory farming, and the ethical implications of meat consumption. The judge let them go on for a while until he'd clearly had enough. The judge stated that the court was not the appropriate venue for dietary activism. He dropped all charges against me and declared that the three of them would be responsible for all court fees and fines related to the incident. I walked out of that courtroom a free man. Never again did I eat lunch on the quad without checking what events were scheduled that day, and I always make sure to bring a backup sandwich just in case. I used to work for a travel-heavy consulting company that required constant movement between locations. Our headquarters were in Chicago, but employees lived nationwide, which worked in our favor since we rarely needed to visit the main office. The company had two ways to start your monthly rotation. You could volunteer for an assignment before your normal rotation. They'd fly you from home to the job site, or if work was available near your home, you could start there. With the second option, they paid you reduced travel compensation for the theoretical travel time from Chicago to your hometown, 1 hour paid for every 3 hours of travel. This arrangement saved the company airfare costs while allowing us to work close to home with a little extra pay. Living in Hawaii, I regularly took advantage of starting in Honolulu, where plenty of work was available. Since the Chicago-Hawaii flight was about 9 hours, I get paid for 3 hours of travel time, and the company saved on plane tickets. Unfortunately, this company had one of the most toxic cultures I've experienced. Management was petty and aggressive, firing people for ridiculous reasons without warning. I once saw 2 co-workers get fired over minor fender benders with minimal damage. They even fired those employees' supervisors. Everyone walked on eggshells. I was trying to find another job, but the market was terrible. After avoiding drama for my first year and a half, trouble finally found me. One day I noticed they weren't giving me the 1 to 3 travel pay for starting in my home city. I called payroll to fix what I assumed was a simple error. When I called, the payroll representative told me they don't provide travel pay for my situation. I explained the company policy about receiving 1 hour of pay for every 3 hours of theoretical travel time, mentioning I've been using this benefit without issues until now. The representative transferred me to their manager. The manager claimed this had never been their policy. I mentioned that just 2 months ago someone in their department had arranged this payment without any problem. The manager said they would investigate who told me that and counsel them on correct policy. That's when I realized I had spoken with this exact same manager 2 months earlier. When I pointed this out, there was an awkward pause before the manager simply stated they don't do that anymore. I said okay and hung up, completely confused by the interaction. The next month, instead of starting in Hawaii, I volunteered for an assignment in Germany. Now, instead of paying me about $100 in travel pay, they were paying 1. Business class airfare from Honolulu to Frankfurt, about $4,000. 2. My actual travel time. 3. Another employee's flight to Hawaii to cover the work there. I continued this for 6 months until finding a new job. Each month, I volunteered for assignments requiring expensive international flights from Hawaii. I collected airline miles and saw amazing places while the company wasted thousands of dollars, all to avoid paying me $100 in travel compensation. They had other short-sighted policies too. If they knew you had connections in a work location, they wouldn't give you meal allowances if you canceled your hotel. So everyone would check in, then stay with friends anyway, costing the company both the empty hotel room and the meal allowance. This thinking was common throughout the company. Management would spend absurd amounts to prevent employees from benefiting even when the original arrangement saved money. I wasn't surprised when they went out of business a few years later. With such spiteful mismanagement, it was inevitable.